we're going to start by cutting this fabric for our Amish Squares block. I don't really need this section, so I'm just going to use my rotary cutter and slice it straight off. That's just so it's out of the way. The next thing I'm going to do, now I ignore the lines on my mat. So I'm just going to put here, and I'm going to cut to make sure it's a nice straight edge. Take that. Now we know this is a straight edge, and line it up. I need 2.5 inch blocks, so line it up at the bottom and at the top on the 2.5 inch line. I'll hold this and straight like that. Now I cut it with the fabric I want to keep underneath the ruler, because there's been plenty of times when I have lined up the fabric I wanted and then I cut and then it goes this way. Maybe not quite that drastic, but that way I know the fabric underneath is safe from, mess ups. So after we got our piece, we need to make 4 squares. So I know the top and the bottom are both parallel. We can see here this edges now. So again, we're going to line it up, top and the bottom, and then trim this off. Turn it around so we can protect our good fabric underneath here. Now, I could line this up at 2.5 inches, but my ruler is 6 inches wide, so I like to line it up on the 5 inch, because I know 2 5-inch squares, or 2 2.5 inch squares are 5 inches. So I'm going to just cut this, lining this up with the 5 inch, making sure these both are parallel, and cut it. Then I move it over a little bit, line this line up with 2.5 inch mark, and cut it. So now we have 2 of the 4 we need. This piece is big enough for 2 more, so I'm lining up this top with a line, the side with a line, and the bottom with a line. Trim that, scoot it over, trim it again. Now this has not been pressed, so it's got a little fold in it. If that bothers you, you can iron it or press it. That does not bother me, so I'm going to leave it. Get rid of all your little bits, throw them away or whatever you do with them. The next color I need is orange. I'm going to need 8 of those. So I have a bigger chunk of 8 of the orange, but it's still just leftovers. So I'm going to cut 2 layers at a time. I'm just kind of lining it up a little bit. Not perfect. Actually, it's not lining up, so it doesn't matter. But I'm just going to cut a section. This much looks good. Now I know that line is straight. I did not necessarily make this line square with this. I just cut a random spot. Now I'm going to line this up with the 2.5 inch mark. I don't think this is going to be enough for all 8 blocks, so I'm going to do another one. Line the 2.5 inch mark up. And cut it. Okay. So now these both are parallel to the top and the bottom. These edges are a little funky. I don't know if you can see on the camera, this one is really funky. So I'm going to move over here, cut this part off that's no good, and throw it away. I'm going to line this up with the 5 and trim. Move it over to 2.5 and trim again. Anytime this is not in your hand, close the blade. And now I've got 4 of the orange squares. So this will be enough for 4 more. Again, this side's a little wonky, so I'm going to cut that, turn it over, line it up with the 5, there we go. There's all 8 orange. I'm going to repeat the rest of these off camera. They're exactly the same way. If you need to see how to do the rest, just rewatch that part. I'll be back with all of my squares cut. Okay, I'm back. I have all of my squares cut out and arranged. On the back of your instructions, it shows that you're making each of the 4 corners separately. You're going to sew those together separately. So that's these 4, these 4, these 4, and these 4. And if you look close, these 4 are actually identical. They're just rotated. So if you rotate a little bit, there's pink, orange, orange, white. This one is also pink, orange, orange, white. So I just make it easier. Rotate them all so they're the exact same way. Stack them on top of each other. Okay, back at the sewing machine, I have my piles of squares lined up. I'm going to put these off to the side. We're going to start with the first one. Take one of each, put them right sides together, line up the edges. I've actually just turned my sewing machine on, so I leave my needle down because I have a cat who likes to come play with it. So I just manually rotate the needle up. And on my machine, I've got a quilting stitch, which when I push the button, it just does nothing. Oh. Hang on. Okay, I don't know if you can see, my needle is right here. When I push the quilting button, it moves it over a little bit. So it's lined up on my machine. This little line right here is about a 1/4 inch line from the needle. So it moves the needle over so I can line the fabric up to the edge of my presser foot, and that's 1/4 inch. If you don't have this, instead of lining up your fabric with the edge, you'll have to like scoot it over a little bit. Or sometimes you shouldn't have scooted over this far, but it should be about the edge. If you're not sure how far your 1/4 inch is, you can get a ruler and measure from the needle over and make a line. Anyway, so on my machine, I do not have to start with anything, but you might. So just put this under your needle if you need to. I am using dark gray thread, that's just what's in my thing. Anyway, line this up real good. It doesn't have to be perfect. And this is called chain piecing, where you just put the next ones and you don't even cut it, you just keep going. Through, we bring over our next set, fold it over, line it up. Now before I rearrange the camera and cut the thread and everything, on our block over here, we had a bunch of the middle row. If you remember, see, it also says sew the middle pieces together. Mine are white and yellow. So just reach over, grabbing these, putting white against the yellow. And I'm going to send those through as well. have this long chain of pieces coming from our sewing machine. Since now we need to sew all of these together, I'm going to cut it right here. I'm going to leave the white and orange ones, and I'm going to cut right here. That way we have this long string of all of the pieces that make up the original first 4 blocks. And here's my starter or leader. I cut it off, but I don't need it because I still have stuff in my sewing machine. And I've got this thread cutter. It's a little plier, but there's a blade inside there. So I just use that to cut all my pieces apart. If you don't get it lined up just right, it's a little hard. But anyway, now I'm going to lay all these out. Now if you want, you can take these over to the iron and press them. I'm just going to use my fingers and kind of press them flat. And I always press the seams toward the darker block. In this case, it'd be the orange one. And that's because if you fold it down, you can still see the seam, the fabric through the lighter fabric. This one you can, because my orange fabric is see-through a little bit. So both of them are in the camera. But you just kind of press them, open them up, press them. Until we have 4 that are like this, and we should have 4 that are like this. So what you do is you take one of these, and if you look really close, see it's not lined up on the edge. I'm just going to ignore that, and we're going to keep going. See, this is how it goes. Fold it over. Now on the seams, one should go left and one should go right. This is called nesting the seams. If you need to pin it, you can pin it. I never pin right in my seam. I just pin right next to the seam. But you adjust it so you don't pin it so both ends are equal and the seams are pressed in opposite directions. This is a little bit uneven right here, you can tell, but I'm just going to keep going. There's another one. See, this one I probably do need to iron because this is bent. Pressing the seam up. Making sure the seams go different directions. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. There's another one. Line it up. Also on mine, I have a little lip right here. It always folds this seam allowance this way, so I push this seam allowance up with my fingers. Your machine might not have that little lip, but mine does, and it's nice because it folds that down. Alright, now that those 4 are sewn together, we've got these, it's time to cut everything. So, bring your little thread cutter back, or you can use scissors. But see, I just leave a couple stitches between each one. At this point, you could iron everything, lay it all back down according to the image. For me, since I have to rearrange my camera, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go right back into sewing. So, what it says to do first is take one of these and sew it onto one of these. Make sure you get the correct fabric in the corner. It should be the opposite color of what's on this one. So I've got yellow on this one, which And yellow's right here on this one. And my pink is in the corner. If you think you might forget, it's okay to color this in the colors that you want to use. So you line this up just like this. And if you want to use your leader, and that's just so your thread doesn't get sucked down into the machine. This machine is really good about not sucking it down. I'm just doing it to show you what you should do. Okay, now this block is going to go on the other side of that, so I'm going to put that aside. The middle section is going to look like this. It's going to have yellow, white, pink, yellow, white. So I'm going to put this one aside and sew this pink one next to the white one. And then this one has the pink at the bottom, the yellow at the top, and this yellow at the bottom and the white at the top. So what I'm going to do is just use this, cut the last two that I just sewed. That way there's still something under my needle. Unfold them. This one gets the other square on this side. Line it up so the corner colors are opposite of each other. Fold it over, line it up, press the seams the direction they're supposed to go. This one goes with this one. I'm going to reach up and get this last one, and it goes right here like this. So line up this top edge, line up this other edge, and the middles should line up. Mine don't a little bit, so I just scoot it up. And if yours are kind of like mine and didn't quite line up, you can pull this, or you can reach under and pull the bottom, whichever way it needs to be pulled. So when it goes under the needle, it's straight. So use your fingers to hold it in place. So now you should have all your pieces. And I got this little flower from Amazon. So, and you can use a little Allen wrench to take this off to put a new blade in there. Alright, so now we have our pieces. So this piece gets sewn to this piece. Line it up, fold it over. And because we do have so many seams to match, I will pin. So you line up the corner, you line up the first seam. I'm going to pin right there. And unlike in garment sewing, I always pin perpendicular to the seam. I know when you're sewing clothes, you want to pin this direction. I always pin this direction because it's easier to take out while I'm sewing. So line up those. Line up those. Alright, so now that it's all pinned, I'm going to put it back through my machine. Now, do not sew over the pin. Your needle could hit it, it could break the needle, it could shoot over and hit your eye, or into the machine. So take it out when it gets almost to the needle. And I've got a little metal bowl. I keep my pins in just right here off to the side. So when I get close to a pin, take it out, put it in my bowl. Make sure you can pull the fabric over to make sure it stays even. Okay, so there's 3/5 of our block. Now we just need to pin this one on top, just like this. And then I'm going to iron it, and I will meet you back over at my cutting board with the finished product. Okay, we're back. Here's the block. I did iron it, and as you can see, some of the seams got turned, which means this one is pressed this way, and this one is pressed this way. If that bothers you, you just get your scissors and snip a tiny bit. Don't snip the thread, and then you can iron it again to press it all the same way. And as to which side I snip, just whichever one you want. So that will be pressed up. This one will be pressed over. Try to do this with the camera in the way. Anyway, so now if you put it on the edge of the block, it should measure 10.5. I use my ruler. Now, when I'm measuring big things, I do use the lines on my cutting mat because my biggest ruler is only 6.5 inches wide. But what I'm doing now is I'm lining up the 1/2 inch mark right here and down here. So the quilt is lined up on the 0, basically. So I'm lining up the 1/2 inch mark down here and up here. So in a perfect world, the quilt should come to the very edge. But as you can see, it doesn't quite come to the edge. But that's okay. It's not going to be the end of the world. We're just going to go with it. This one looks like it sticks out a little bit over here, so I'm going to trim that just a tiny bit. Rotate it this way. Line up the 1/2 inch mark. And I'm lining up the 1/2 inch mark because I think it's easier to try to line up a line than the edge of the ruler. You do whatever you feel comfortable doing. And then trim off any extra. Line up the 0 over here. Line up the 1/2 inch mark on the 10. And again, there's only a tiny little bit to trim off that way. See, that's how much I trimmed off. But there is your Amish Squares block. I actually quite like that pink with the orange with the yellow. But enjoy!